I have a finance background, and I started working at Anyblock Analytics last year, which was acquired by Blockdaemon. So now I'm also working at Blockdaemon. And for the past half year, I've been working on a project on Solana called Hiro, where we're trying to bring reputation on chain in a similar model that traditional companies are doing so. But I'm going to be talking more about standards and how a data science or how blockchain data is perfect for a data scientist, and how we all need to be focusing on maintaining standards and maintaining interoperability. So the common adage for data scientists is garbage in, garbage out. So what you put into your models is basically how it'll come back out. If you don't properly clean your data, it'll come out like you won't get any useful results. And that's one of the main benefits of blockchain data. It's uniform. It's the same all across the board. Everybody shares the same data, and it needs to be saved in a manner that is very efficient. So standards are used quite intensively in blockchains. So what are standards? So we have the meter, right? It's how far light travels in 1 second, the distance light travels in 1 second, exactly. And this we use all across the world except for maybe the US. And everybody knows it's the same. And the fact that it's the same means everybody can communicate. I'll ask if anybody can recognize this standard. This is also a very common standard. Just shout it out if you recognize it, or if you think you might know what it is. So it's actually the thread of a screw. And it's insane how detailed something as simple as the thread of a screw can get. But having this standard means that it's everybody can share the standard and build on top of this exact screw threading. Otherwise, you'll have different threads, and you want to keep and then you won't have that interoperability. And the way this is achieved is using ISO standards. And we have a bunch of those, but in blockchain, everything is shared automatically. So you don't need to have books upon books of shared standards. So we'll talk about those. Some of the ones you might know are ERC20 or ERC721 on Ethereum, with ERC20 being tokens or fungible tokens, and ERC721 being non-fungible. And then ERC 1155 being kind of a mix of the two, where you can combine multiple token types. Some you might not be as familiar with are ERC 884 or 621, which are security token standards for Delaware corporations. And the other one was, I forgot what 621 was. But the way these normally work is there's an improvement proposal, which leads to a request for comment, which is then standardized on the chain. And that's how we get things like these money Legos. That's why money Legos works. And the two things that this leads to is open finance, as was discussed earlier. But the second, and maybe even more important aspect, is the composability or interoperability across these standards. So how can we work with that? Well, at Anyblock, we have an API where you can query blockchain data quite easily, and it'll always come back with the same data because of these standards, or the same type, the same usable data, the same structure of data, and that you can then compare with completely different areas of Ethereum in the same manner. But we can only do this if contract data is actually shared. So that's another pillar of working with blockchain data. open source. So being willing to share the data or the infrastructure of your project and what it's built upon. So right here, I'll quickly tab out of this and show you what I'm talking about. So on Etherscan, if you go to any, you can still see it, right?
No, right now we're seeing your Ethereum standards slide. Maybe you need to reshare so we can see the block explorer. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, you can see it then? Oh. How about now?
Yep.
Great. So yeah, this is Etherscan, and I've got a contract right here. It's the Uniswap v2 router. And Etherscan collects this information. So this is the source code of the contract and the ABI. And using the ABI, you can translate event data. But the ABI is only here because the Uniswap team supplied it. So if you don't actually supply this as the contract creator, then people might be able to figure it out by brute forcing it essentially. But by providing this, you can allow people to read the data within your contract. So that looks like this. If you actually, so this is an ERC 721 contract. Oh no, not here. It looks like this here. Here I provided this Jupyter notebook, and here I'm providing the address for the Uniswap v2 router address and the ABI. And then you can query this address using your RPC calls, or by sending RPC queries and fetching information from that contract itself. And that is then translated as events. So here, okay, I didn't take Uniswap v2 here, but this is the Bored Ape Yacht Club address. And here from what it spits out, you can see each event, and you can see the event type and what happened. So here, this is just a standard transfer event from address 000 to this address. So this person minted this Bored Ape. And by using that, you can then build more interesting things. Like you can build dashboards, which is what we do to show the use case of our ABI, where you can then, this is again Bored Ape Yacht Club, where you can populate it with data, such as the transfers on a monthly basis of Bored Apes, 52,000 in total. Here's all of them counted up in a table. The top holders, with the top holder owning 105 Bored Apes. Yeah, and then the mintings and transfers over time, comparing how many were minted, 10,000 minted and transferred 42,000 times. It's actually not transferred very often. But basically what I'm saying is you can enter any NFT here, or you can search for any NFT address here, and it'll always give you back information in the same way. So when we built this dashboard, we didn't really actually have to do much, because all there was a few simple queries, which can be reused for every single NFT. And the same goes for this, the Uniswap v2. Here, it's a few simple RPC queries, and you can fetch for any owner on SushiSwap or on Uniswap or any type of AMM that is modeled after Uniswap and uses the same logic in the contract. You can fetch what their liquidity where they have liquidity, how much liquidity they have provided, and so on, and all directly off the chain. And this is what standards help with on Ethereum. So going back to it.
Now we go out of the rabbit hole again of ones and zeros.
I hope that wasn't too technical. All right, so besides Ethereum standards, we also have blockchain standards. And the issue with these is the lower we get down, or the further we get away from Ethereum, the lower the composability gets. Layer 2s are highly interoperable with Ethereum. Then EVM compatible smart chains are interoperable with Ethereum in that they have the same infrastructure. But then when you get down to something Solana or near a secret, you can't reuse any of the logic you built for an EVM chain within those chains. And that's an issue because well, ideally, we would like extremely high interoperability. And I'm not even just talking about things like our API or tracking assets across chains. If, yeah, you can track maybe NFTs on XDAI and NFTs on Ethereum. You need two different requests, maybe, yeah, but you can still compare them. But and on Solana, you could as well by just writing a different request, maybe. But tracking value and tracking assets across chains, it becomes much harder. If you wanted to provide collateral on Solana and then take out a loan on Aave on mainnet, that becomes extremely difficult. Then cross-chain, we do have some standards. And projects like Chainlink, they help with that by providing a price feed on many different chains in the same manner, and that are fetched in the same way no matter which chain you're on. So if you query a price feed on Solana or a price feed on mainnet, you're going to be getting the same price. Aragon does it the same thing for DAOs. Currently, I believe they're on Polygon and mainnet, Ethereum mainnet, but they want to expand as well, and they give you DAO as a service. The graph is kind of like what we at Anyblock were doing, in that they provide data indices, and we were actually indexing for the graph, and still are, and provide data on-chain data in a GraphQL format, so you can use that anywhere you want. And Blockdaemon, we provide nodes in a very standardized format, and you can launch any node. You can launch any node on our supported chains in the same manner, and be up and running in no time. So I'll get into that a little bit to get my my marketing points in. So yeah, we provide nodes as a service. And you can immediately launch any of these nodes. Soon we'll be launching an even simpler and even quicker way, but not allowed to talk about that yet. It was exponential, but now it's still quite strong growth. But once you get to a high number of nodes, I guess it slows down a bit. But so far we've got over 20,000 nodes launched. Huh?
What does a node do in a blockchain? Because some people might not even understand the terminology node, and then it's quite difficult to follow your presentation.
Yeah. So a node is just any piece of a blockchain that saves the data and holds that ledger and replicates that ledger. So if you're an Ethereum node, you have the state of the Ethereum blockchain on your device. So these are launched on third-party, well, either on our bare metal or within cloud infrastructure. So we'll launch an Ethereum node on AWS, for example, for you, and that means you can get the full data of the blockchain from your own device, or you can also participate in validating through this service. So if you, for example, if you want to launch an ETH 2.0 validator node, you can do that yourself, or you can join liquid staking protocols like Lido. Or you can stake with staking facilities who are up after me, right?
Yeah.
So basically, nodes are just copies of the blockchain, and we launch those for anybody that might need them. But we do so for institutions. So the key takeaways I want to pass on is that if you're building something, build it with standards in mind, so that you can maintain the composability and interoperability that we have learned to love here in the blockchain space. Then very important, open source your stuff and provide access to it. I'm a big fan of Solana, but one of the things that they do mess up is that none of them are open source, and probably because they're scared that somebody will find issues in their code. But what that leads to is fragmentation and different standards across the board. The only ones that are actually open source are the ones from Solana Labs. So most people are building on the things that Solana Labs creates themselves. And then the externally made products or externally made contracts aren't really shared. And that really slows growth, but it also means that it's not as standardized across the board, which it should be. And lastly, if there is no standard, take ownership and create one. Be that person who adds a bit more certainty to the world and how we're going to move forward, and push to be the standard for others. Yeah. So hit me up if you want to. Here's my email and my LinkedIn. And if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Wow, this was a very philosophical ending to be the light, basically. when I translate into my non-technical terms, I would love for you to share also a little bit about Hiro DAO and that story, and what is a DAO, if that's okay for you to share, because that's also very fascinating for people who don't yet understand how blockchain works and how Web3 works.
Sure. So Hiro was originally a fully decentralized VC where decisions were made decentrally. So by using a model called feudarchy, we wanted to use which is a you turned off my sharing, right?
Yeah.
Great.
So that we can see you.
Yeah. So that uses a prediction market model in order to track voting and also punish wrong voting. So you basically put up a stake and you reap rewards depending on whether you vote with the majority or against the majority. And we wanted to do this with something we called reputation, which we would be tracking on chain, and which would change depending on the outcome of what you voted for, and so on. The issue with that is that a VC model would suffer from basically, we wouldn't be able to land any of the good projects or the great projects. We might get some good projects, and we'd probably get a lot of crappy projects. That's just the issue with being in that market, and you really need to be quick in order to. You need to be quick, and you need to have a good reputation as a VC yourself in order to land the greatest projects, like A16Z does or Alameda. And so our model would be too slow, and it also wouldn't be agile enough. So what we are focusing on instead is creating reputation as a standard, kind of like like my topics here was today, which can be used across the board by across all of Solana for any address that's active on Solana, and we do that by acting like a matchmaker or more so a marketplace of projects that are building on Solana and contributors that want to contribute. And then by contributing, you earn reputation, and or by performing poorly, you lose reputation, which is tracked on chain, and it's non-tradable. So it's something that sticks with your specific address. And by dipping into this value on your address, other projects or other users can determine whether they want to work with you or whether whether you would be a valuable asset to the protocol. So that's what we're building.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. It's quite
Yeah.
interesting what like everything that one can build when one understands how to compose the different pieces of knowledge in the market. We have a question from Adrian here. He's asking, how do you think the future of interoperability between L1s will most likely look like?
Yeah, L1 interoperability will be difficult. So there will be layers in between. So I don't think we'll get them interoperable without strong decentralized bridges. And there's quite a few of those already, right? But it's especially UTXO chains with something with Ethereum would be a difficult thing to bridge. Getting actual decentralized wrapped Bitcoin will be difficult. There's a project that we're actually working with called Flare, which is trying to do that, but it has issues of its own that I myself am not too happy with. But that's yeah. It's definitely something that needs to be focused on, getting true decentralized bridging from one L1 to the other. Maybe you can work on that, Adrian.
In some way, we are working on that at Unit Network, but more about that at some later point in time. I think let's look at from explain me like I'm 5 perspective. What is so fascinating for you personally about this entire Web3 space? How did you get into it, and what made you invest now all of your time to build these things in the Web3 world?
So I got into it because I heard you could buy drugs with it, and that sounded cool. I was like, okay, yeah, that's a big FU to the government, and maybe I should try it out. And a long time later, I finally took the plunge to work on it professionally. I didn't, so just disclaimer, I didn't actually buy drugs with it, I just thought it was cool. What fascinates me about it is, what fascinates me about it is this standard, right? It's data that is shared all across the world, and it's the same all across the world, no matter what. And as a data scientist, and as someone with a background in finance, it's the perfect thing to play with, and that's what I spend my day doing, right? At work, using our APIs or using other service providers that offer similar products to just try my hand at figuring out something new and figuring out some connections between different products and stacking them on top of each other.
What's your definition of composability? Because you mentioned that would be one of the main value drivers of blockchain ecosystem.
Yeah, so composability is this money Lego aspect, right? You could, for example, stake your ETH in Lido, and you get some staked ETH back. You can use that staked ETH to as collateral on Aave, and you can borrow some USDC, and then you put that USDC on. You provide liquidity on Uniswap, and it all fits into each other. You get some insurance package on top of it from Nexus. Yeah, it's that's composability. The fact that everything works with everything else.
Yeah, it's quite a big challenge, and maybe for those who are not so familiar with the industry currently, where each blockchain ecosystem, and Caron already alluded to that, is like an isolated kind of island with its own language, with its own culture, with its own current And then basically the next step is, now that everyone is building kind of these different islands that just emerged because people had different views about how the world and the technology should work, like, and what should be the purpose and the use case of that technology. They're building different ecosystems, and then at some point in time, how do they now speak to each other? And this is what we call interoperability. We need standards. It's like when Germany and France have their different railway track sizes, and now the ICE needs to go through Europe. It cannot stop at the border, right? And this is as early as we are in the ecosystem, that now people have to start building bridges, which Juliane from Signature Ventures has mentioned earlier. Um, Even as visionary as we all want to be, we're still building infrastructure. So this is where a lot of cool projects are working at, while then a fraction of the people are really driving the progress on the frontiers of how do we play now with all these Lego blocks that we have, and what cool use cases can we actually do that didn't exist before. And sometimes it's just funny because people get very, very creative putting all these things together, but overall we're still in a very scattered world where everybody's still trying to figure out what is the best way moving forward. And Karen's one of these builders. Hopefully, we're looking really forward to I guess learning about your standards that you are setting with your work and with your other projects on this side. Thanks very much for being with us here today and showing us how actually behind the screens, how data code in blockchain actually looks like. This is quite fascinating. Thank you for being here at World Munich
Happy to
Forum.
be here. Thanks for having me on.